opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Well, good evening, everyone. And, of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. I'm literally watching a video of a guy who took a rat and turned it into a pencil case or a wallet or something. What the hell is going on? Anyways, hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you very much for joining us. If you haven't yet, do me a favor, hit that like button, help us out, share the show. That would be awesome as well. Just doing a couple of quick refreshes, making sure that we are live on all of the requisite platforms. Yes, we are. All right, so yesterday, while I was watching clips of the Clinton testimonies, I realized that the counsel they brought with them was none other than Cheryl Mills. Cheryl Mills is a co-conspirator of the Clintons. In fact, she was unindicted and given immunity during Hillary Clinton's email investigation. She was there for Benghazi. She was there for the Bill Clinton impeachment. She has been a close confidant of the Clintons for many, many years. And it just, I always think if you really want to get away with your crimes, you turn your lawyer into one of your criminal partners. So we are going to be talking about Cheryl Mills. Of course, we are going to have to talk about Iran. We're going to talk about a couple of more pieces related to Epstein and just a whole bunch of fun stuff. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Grab your popcorn because we are about to get into it right about now. All right, my friends. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Give me just one moment, and I am about to get us set up here with a brief message from the first sponsor of the program, and that will be right here. Now, I'm sure you guys have probably heard all of the news about these miracle weight loss shots, but the troubling issue is that 2026 data has now officially revealed what should probably be a wake-up call for the people taking those shots. There was a major analysis that was done, and it revealed that once people stop taking these injections, they end up regaining about 60% of the weight they lost within that first year. And what's even worse about it is that most of the weight they gain back is actually pure fat. That's right, the muscle they lose stays gone because it leaves them with a crashed metabolism and a body that's functionally a lot older than when they started. This is why I'm pretty obsessed with today's new sponsor. It's called GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of using needles to override my system, it uses clinically studied, plant-based ingredients like metabolite to help my body naturally boost its own hunger control signals. You end up getting that same fullness and fewer cravings, but without all of the scary side effects or the metabolic rebound. It supports my goals while protecting my muscles so I can actually keep the results for good. So to celebrate Valentine's Day and the year we have ahead, you can right now get 50% off with GLP-1 Elevate at trimwithredpill.com. Every single order comes with a complete support bundle with free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping on subscriptions. So head on over to the link in the description below, trimwithredpill.com right now, to claim your 50% discount before it expires. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. Yeah, sorry about that. There's something off with the audio there. Obviously, you guys heard it. I fixed it, but I guess I pulled up the wrong file. So either way, I will fix that for the next time that we play it. Definitely not supposed to be that way. All right, you guys. So listen, I do apologize. Hopefully I didn't blow out your eardrums and your speakers. That's definitely not supposed to be what was broadcast through. But either way, appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much for hanging out with us today. We do have a lot to talk about. First, I want to talk about a couple of big wins. We're going to check in with the United States Supreme Court. California and their plan to secretly transition your children has just been blocked by the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, this secret gender transition policy that they had in play would essentially have stopped parents from gaining access to the medical records of their children. Their children could have requested to transition to somebody like a teacher or a doctor, and the parents wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. Now, this was an overwhelming victory for parents. It was a 6-3 vote, and it allowed a lower court's ruling in favor of those parents rejecting the sort of evil transgender ideology that they were trying to impress upon California children to be wiped away. You might guess liberal justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson were the only dissenting voices. So the Supreme Court has now officially barred California from enforcing this state rule that has been on the books for a little bit now. It restricted when schools could notify parents about students who came to them and said, hey, I want to become transgender. I want to move to the opposite gender. And it now requires children to notify their parents if anything is going to happen. Schools are not just going to be able to unilaterally do it. It would also have required previously teachers to use the children's preferred pronouns. But obviously, now there is going to have to be a conversation that takes place. Now, the court on this 6-3 vote, pretty much ideological lines, allowing a federal judge's ruling in favor of those parents who oppose the policy on religious grounds to now go into effect. The San Francisco-based 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals were the one who had put the judge's decision on hold pending this further litigation and decision-making from the Supreme Court. Now, the court's ruling focused on the parents' claim that their rights under the Free Exercise Clause of the Constitution's First Amendment was being violated by this law in California. The court did not grant a similar request made by teachers who object to the policy. We conclude that the parents who seek religious exemptions are likely to succeed on the merits of their Free Exercise Clause claim. The Supreme Court said the parents who assert a free exercise claim have sincere religious beliefs about sex and gender, and they feel a religious obligation to raise their children in accordance with those beliefs should be upheld. So this is really good news for parents, and obviously it's going to set a precedent throughout the United States if this should come up again. I can think of a couple of different liberal jurisdictions where it may be seen in the near future. Now, also, SCOTUS has slapped down a power grab that New York was attempting to institute, another 6-3 ruling, which is effectively going to block a scheme by Democrats to eliminate the only GOP congressional seat in the state of New York. Again, a 6-3 ruling blocking the Democrats in New York's attempt to redraw the state's only Republican-held district in New York City. I believe this is Staten Island. The case was Malliotakis versus Williams, and it centers on New York's 11th congressional district, covering Staten Island, parts of southern Brooklyn, and it currently is represented by Republican Representative Nicole Malliotakis. Now, in February, Malliotakis had formally asked the Supreme Court to intervene after a New York trial judge had ordered the state to redraw the district in what critics say was an overt attempt to engineer a race-based political outcome. The controversy began first when a group of voters challenged the boundaries of New York's 11th district. They claimed it diluted Black and Latino voting power, which is in violation of the New York Constitution. In late January, trial judge Justice Jeffrey Perlman ruled in their favor. He prohibited use of the existing map and instructed the state's independent redistricting commission to draw a new crossover district, one that would specifically structure it so that minority voters could elect their preferred candidate. Now, of course, critics immediately had something to say about it. This was not simply neutral redistricting. It was about engineering the outcome of future elections. Malliotakis, along with state election officials and voters, of course, appealed the state courts for a stay. When New York's appellate courts refused to halt that order, they turned to the U.S. Supreme Court, and thank goodness the court answered. So it was just last night that the Supreme Court stepped in. They stayed the decision by the lower court, and they allowed New York to proceed with the 2026 elections using the current congressional map. Justice Samuel Alito wrote in concurrence with the majority. He did not mince words. He's a fairly intelligent man, and he's been on the court for quite some time. The New York Supreme Court had ordered the Independent Redistricting Commission to redraw this district for the express purpose of ensuring that minority voters could elect a preferred candidate. Now, Alito called it what it was. This is unadorned racial discrimination. And that, of course, my friends, is illegal in the United States of America. Now, according to the majority opinion, a state court cannot invoke state law to justify violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And of course, as you are all well aware, under the Supremacy Clause, federal constitutional protections override anything at the state level if it is contrary to what the federal government has decided. Justice Alito also explained that the New York trial court ordered the redrawing of the district for the express purpose of ensuring minority voters that they could elect the candidate of their choice, a mandate, he said, which amounts to explicit race-based government action, which, of course, is barred by the United States Constitution. Now, citing some case precedent, which you also may be familiar with, Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, Alito emphasized that race-based state action is permissible only in the most extraordinary case. He concluded bluntly that those circumstances simply do not exist here, so we're not going to allow it to happen. Of course, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, joined with Justices Kagan and Jackson, issued sharply worded dissent accusing the majority of overreach and violating federalism principles. The majority has, of course, rejected that argument, noting that the lower court's order risked forcing New York to conduct the 2026 election using a constitutionally suspect district, one that would likely be struck down later, that would cause chaos, and of course it would require a brand new election and the expenditure of a lot more money. Alito warned that delaying this action, if they did not take this up now, it could bring about an unconstitutional district in the very, very close coming November election, and that the election of a member of the House of Representatives whose entitlement to that office would then be tainted. Alito also made clear that the state court's rationale rested on state constitutional grounds, but the state law cannot override federal constitutional protections. Under the Supremacy Clause, a state cannot authorize the violation of federal rights. And of course, if the federal rights of anybody else were to come up into question, I'm sure that the state of New York would have something to say about it. Now, in terms of the situation for Representative Malliotakis, the ruling represents a major victory. It means she's going to be able to continue to run in her position, and likely she will be reelected in November. Today's decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to keep New York's 11th congressional district intact helps restore the public's confidence in our judicial system and proves the challenge to our district lines was always meritless. Now, the plaintiffs in this case attempted to manipulate our state's courts to use race as a weapon to rig our elections. That was wrong, as demonstrated by today's ruling, which is clearly unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the politicization of New York's courts and its judges necessitated action from the nation's highest court. I thank the justices who stopped the voters on Staten Island and in southern Brooklyn from being stripped of their ability to elect a representative who represents their values. Whether I serve another term in Congress is a decision for the voters, not Democrat Party bosses and their high-priced lawyers. Okay, so congratulations, Nicole. Hopefully you do win again in November. All right. Now, we also had a hearing today where DHS Secretary Kristi Noem appeared for some fairly contentious questioning, and not simply from the Democrats, but from a couple of people who identify as Republicans as well. But Senator Eric Schmidt was not one of those people. Earlier today, he tore into the Democrats in the committee, and they, of course, showed up trashing ICE. They supported sanctuary policies, and these sanctuary policies have led time and time again to the victimization in a criminal sense, as well as the murder of countless American citizens. Democrats have asked the so-called victims of ICE to stand up during a Senate hearing, but of course, the victims of illegal aliens were unable to stand up because they're dead. Those dead people are not going to be there, and it's a bit of an unfair comparison for the Democrats to bring these illegal aliens and radical left protesters and have them stand up as if they're the only people who are being victimized in this instance. And of course, those people are breaking the law, so they're not exactly victims, are they? So Senator Eric Schmidt, during his opportunity to question the witnesses, he began by highlighting the fact that American citizens who were murdered by those illegal immigrants are not going to be able to show up. And he went off on Democrats for nearly 8 minutes before he even asked a single question of DHS Secretary Noem. He said, since we're having folks stand up, I would like to have Laken Riley stand up. I would like to have Kayla Hamilton stand up. I would like to have Jocelyn Nungaray stand up. I would like to have Rachel Moran stand up. I would have the beautiful sons and daughters who were murdered by illegal immigrants stand up. But they can't because they're dead. They were murdered by illegal immigrants that were let into this country under Joe Biden. Now, he further highlighted a number of other cases that I'm sure we've talked about here on this show on many different occasions. Illegal aliens who the Democrats appear to be fighting for to keep them in our country. They want to deny ICE's attempts to deport these people and keep Americans safe. They would rather have Americans continue to be killed and victimized and murdered and whatever else you might have happen to them. There was also a woman by the name of Stephanie Minter. She was a Virginia woman who was also murdered by illegal aliens. And funny enough, her killer is right now being protected in the state of Virginia by Governor Abigail Spanberger. He also said, forgive me, I don't want to be lectured by the Democrats on this point. I would think in a different time, in a different place, that we could all actually agree that if somebody is here illegally and they're being released from prison, that we would let federal law enforcement know about it. But apparently not. He also went on to list the lengthy piece of criminal illegal aliens who were being protected by the Democrats. Now, I don't believe that we're going to watch the full 8 minutes of this clip here, but I would just like to hear the emotion in the senator's voice. Let me get past this commercial real briefly. Okay. Just a moment of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're having folks stand up, I would have Laken Riley stand up. I would have Kayla Hamilton stand up. I would have Jocelyn Nungari stand up. I would have
JFK, honey, it's RFK Jr. JFK Jr. he's not in the administration.
Have Rachel Moran stand up. I would have the beautiful sons and daughters who were murdered by illegal immigrants stand up, but they can't because they're dead. They were murdered by illegal immigrants that were led into this country by Joe Biden. And I think it's important to set the stage since we're having...
Oh, hold on. It's Tony Man. Hey, Zach and Lisa, checking in. Surgery went well. I'm pretty sore, but I'm anticipating a fast recovery. Thanks to everybody in the chat for the prayers. Tony, it's good to hear from you, buddy. I'm glad that you're doing well. Glad to know that you are on the mend and recovering. Continue to rest up, buddy. Don't push it too hard and just sit back and enjoy the show. Glad you're here, homie.
This oversight hearing to set the stage how we got here. 5 years ago, something was done that had never been done in the history of our country. We had a president who willfully ignored immigration laws and immigration enforcement.
The ramifications of that are still being felt today. And the idea that Richard Blumenthal, Dick Blumenthal, would have these people stand up to be recognized during a hearing where the Secretary of Homeland Security is being questioned and recognized for her efforts to keep America safe and implement the agenda of President Trump is simply appalling to me.
Madam Secretary, for...
So I play this for contrast, okay? Because the good senator we just heard from, he's obviously on the right path. But the Democrats are they are so lost in the fog of their hatred for President Trump, and frankly, their hatred for the people of the United States. They continuously fail to recognize that they have latched onto a losing position.
a year, you maintain that no U.S. citizens have been arrested or detained by ICE or CBP after hearings that I conducted in the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation.
Okay, and obviously this question is incredibly disingenuous. ICE and CBP are not going out onto American streets with the intention of arresting American citizens, to have them deported or put into concentration camps or sent off to the gulag or have them sent down to El Salvador. However, if they go out onto streets and they are attempting to engage in an immigration raid and American citizens limit their ability to successfully do those things that they need to do to keep America safe, and they break laws, they may likely be arrested and then face charges. Okay? These are two totally different things here, Donang Dick.
The ranking member, you admitted finally in a letter written to me just last month that, in fact, U.S. citizens have been detained and arrested. I'm going to ask, Mr. Chairman, that that letter be entered into the record. Thank you. You put the number as 38. Far more American citizens have been arrested by ICE and CBP, probably in the hundreds, perhaps the thousands. Have you met with any of the American citizens who have been detained or arrested by your agency?
The individuals that may have been detained and arrested were individuals that could have been obstructing law enforcement operations
you haven't met
and
with
committing
them,
crimes
correct?
that way, and that we would.
Why would she meet with them? They're criminals. They're obstructing the legal actions of federal agents. She has nothing to apologize for. She's got no reason to pay fealty to these individuals. If they knew what was good for them, they would get the hell out of the way and they would stop showing up to obstruct. There's no reason for anybody, Kristi Noem or the lowest level employee at the DHS, to call these people and say, I'm sorry, mea culpa. You're an American citizen and you fucked around and found out. Pardon my French, but that's exactly what happened. And no one owes them a damn thing.
I'd like to introduce you to
until their
three
identity
of them.
was confirmed.
Leo, Javier, and Miramar, would you please stand?
I would ask in response, have you, Donang Dick Blumenthal, or any of your colleagues in the Democrat caucus bothered to call the sons, the daughters, the husbands, the parents of any of these women that were mentioned by the good senator a few moments ago and apologized for the fact that their lives were snuffed out prematurely because of the policies of your own party? I doubt they have. In fact, I know that they haven't. They won't even look these people in the eye.
These three individuals, Madam Secretary, were arrested by your agency, Leonardo Garcia Venegas, Javier Ramirez, and Miramar Martinez.
They picked all the Browns. They got everybody of Hispanic descent that they could that's being arrested. And it should show something to you that out of all of the people, because there's been plenty of whites, plenty of radical left-wing commies who were born of European descent who have been arrested. I've shown you pictures of them. They didn't bring any of the trannies out, if you'll notice. They were like Jessica Tuberculosis or whatever her name is. They're not going to bring those people out. They're only going to bring out the Browns of Hispanic descent.
Do you know what your agents did to Leo Venegas? I'll tell you. On May 21 of last year, they entered the private property at a house that he was constructing without consent, without a warrant.
Were they there to arrest a bunch of illegal aliens who were on site and working illegally? Because it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Nobody cares, Dick.
Illegally. Again,
Chris Chan, that works. I was thinking Jessica Yaniv, but I was like, gosh, he's Canadian.
June 12th, they entered private property, a home where he was doing construction.
You know, to be fair, all of the trans who have been arrested are still in prison because they're actually terrorists. They're not going to get out for many, many years. So I guess Donang Dick couldn't bring him in.
He is a United States citizen, born in Florida. They seized him and ignored and disregarded his proof of citizenship. Wouldn't you agree with me that no U.S. citizen simply working lawfully should be arrested?
In law enforcement operations across the country, there are times when U.S.
It's a
citizens
simple yes or
may
no.
be arrested or detained until
Would
their
you agree
identity
with
is
me,
confirmed
Madam
and that they
Secretary,
haven't
Barf. Chris is hotter. Barf.
committed a
U.S.
crime.
citizen.
Oh my God. So we would obviously need to take a look at the camera, but I would guess that guy probably was obstructing pretty seriously. It wasn't like he just hey, I'm just working while brown. And they just happened to arrest him. Now here, Kristi Noem
Right.
actually calls out Donang Dick for knowing the names of these American citizens who got rounded up by these federal agencies for obstructing, but he doesn't know the names of any of the other American citizens who were actually murdered. In fact, one who seems to be of Hispanic descent, and Kristi Noem knows her name, but Donang Dick doesn't. Tell us again about your service, Dick. Tell us about how brave you were firing an M16 from a helicopter, taking out the Viet Cong.
Do you know who Angel Samanago is? Do you recognize that name?
This
is an individual
we're talking about
that was murdered
an egregious
in your
illegality
state
here,
by an
a
illegal
violation
alien,
of rights and trust.
duct taped.
The answers are
It looked
very
like it was
simple,
an assassination.
And I would have hoped
I haven't
that
heard you say one
could give
victim's
better
name
answers today
from illegal
to these
immigrants that
three
are here
individuals.
perpetuating
Would you like
violence
to say
against
anything
people?
to Ms. Miramar?
I'd
Ms.
like to hear you
Ramirez,
say the
or
name
Mr.
of one of our victims
Venegas?
of illegal criminal activity and fight for one of those victims so that we can stop as many of them from being created in the future by people who should never be in this country to begin with. Do you know?
She's based. I love it. Keep going. Let's hear it. Do it again. Do it again. Bring up another one. Now, of course, I don't know how these people keep getting in. I think they must be letting them in. They want this to happen, obviously. So while Kristi Noem was testifying, just basically as soon as she was sworn in, you had a protester stand up and begin screaming at her. That person was quickly removed. It was pretty wild. It was pretty wild. Hold on. Let's go ahead and watch the video. Oh,
watch what
on.
happens when a 50-year-old
Gotta get past the commercial. Okay. Well, we got another Senate stalwart, Dick Durbin, another Dick.
Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you for that positive response. Please go ahead and give your opening statement. No. Okay. Well.
She said, I'm a former FEMA employee. We don't have any way of knowing whether or not she is. But if she isn't, I can understand why they fired her. No shame. No shame in this game.
You may proceed.
Oh, yes, you may proceed. All right. Here is another one. It happened again.
He didn't.
Okay. I guess this is after she testified. Well, she's talking to a little girl in a wheelchair. I bet you she's the victim of an illegal alien.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
You should be ashamed of yourself. Stand with immigrants. Stand with immigrants. What?
Stand with Americans.
Right. We stand with immigrants.
Stand out front.
You want to know who we are? We are families who've lost loved ones to illegal alien crime.
Look at that.
No such thing as illegal
families
immigrant.
detained in an inhumane system, oppressing them, violating their basic human rights.
All of those people standing, holding a picture. That's an American citizen who was killed by an illegal alien. And Kristi Noem takes the time to speak to every single one of them. Guarantee she knows every single one of their names. Here's another one. Another female was removed from the hearing. She shouted, 200 Americans were killed by ICE. I don't think that that's an accurate number. But she was speaking about somebody named Keith Porter Jr. and Linda Davis. I haven't heard their names before.
I didn't know this.
Don't know who they are. All right. And this was during the questioning of Dick Durbin.
Violence, domestic terrorists, as a way to calm the scene?
These violent terrorists have put them in a situation where they've been, it's unprecedented what these agents have faced. So that situation on the ground that day was chaotic. And it was something that they were transpiring and sharing information
brand them as
with
domestic
us.
terrorists? Can you explain why you decided to brand these victims that we all saw on video?
Victims.
Who were out protesting the activities of your agency and were killed as a result of it. How did you think that calling them domestic terrorists at that scene was somehow going to calm the situation?
You know,
Well, they tried to kill federal agents. I mean, I'm cool with it. I'm totally cool with it. They called us domestic terrorists for protesting in Washington, D.C. They called everybody who supported President Trump a domestic terrorist. Yeah, no, I have no qualms about it. I don't lose any sleep. In fact, I sleep like a baby.
Senator, we are working in those situations where there's a tragic loss of life and that there is something that our agents are involved in, that we continue to deliver information.
Is it so hard to say you were wrong?
We
and
continue,
issue a
as these
retraction?
investigations continue to go, we will provide, I absolutely strive to provide factual information and will continue
And when
to
you
do
fail,
that.
do you admit it publicly?
Absolutely. We always know
Will you
that there's
admit it
room
now?
for improvement, that we will.
Where does that figure even come from? 200 Americans killed by ICE? I don't even think there's been 200 illegals killed by ICE. And I wouldn't care about that either. Black Lives Matter. Somebody must have not told her that Black Lives Matter is dead as an organization after they all stole all the money from their various chapters and embezzled it into a series of scams. All right. Now, very, very interesting development from Kristi Noem. This actually piggybacks on something that President Trump had requested some months ago. During Joe Biden's administration, nearly 200,000 Afghan nationals, I hesitate to say refugees because I don't believe them to be refugees, but 190,000 Afghans were allowed unvetted into the United States of America. As we know all too well, the attack that took place in Washington, D.C. on the National Guard, where one young woman lost her life and then the other young man was shot in the head. Of course, he recently appeared at President Trump's State of the Union. He's making a full recovery, or as best he can. That man that perpetrated that attack was an Afghan national who also just happened to work for the Central Intelligence Agency as an Afghan special ops assassin mercenary. Kristi Noem and DHS are currently in the process of re-vetting every single one of those people. To be frank, none of them were vetted in the first place. So I guess it's safe to say that now they are being vetted for the very first time. I would hazard a guess and say that many of those 190,000 people are not going to be in the United States of America for much longer.
Some of the things that we have implemented under President Trump's administration is to go back and look at those individuals who came in under Operation Allies Welcome and make sure that we're re-vetting those, especially those that have come in the last 4 years under the Biden administration, recognizing that they weren't tracking necessarily biometrics or their social media present communication, how they were doing since they've come to the United States. And also, sir, there's a requirement under that program to come back every single year and do an interview to discuss with them and have conversations on what they're doing in the United States, how they're transitioning to the United States under that program, and that was not being done. So we're going back and re-vetting all of those individuals and making sure that we know that if someone is here in this country, that they love America, they want to be a part of our way of life, and they don't wish to do us harm. Some of the things that we have...
There have been a number of tragic incidents that have taken place at the hands of these Afghans that were allowed into the country. And I think anything we can do to ensure that none of that ever happens again, I am fully in support of that. Real quick, I need to say thank you so much to Moon Baby, who says, "What up, Famalam?" Thank you for that. Trump 1, thank you for the cookie. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cans and a cookie. I really do appreciate it. All right, real quick, before we get into the Iran news, I have a very brief message from our friends over on Rumble. My friends, banks are the bad guys. They can freeze your accounts. They can shut off your cards. They can lock you out of your money, and they can do it at a whim overnight as soon as they want to. They don't protect you. They control you. And that's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So, introducing the Rumble Wallet. It's a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just get to buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can also own Tether Gold, which is real gold. It's on the blockchain, but it is physical metal. With Rumble Wallet, when you buy Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars. Each one is fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. It's real gold without bank vault storage fees or gatekeepers. So you can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, Tether Gold will even be redeemed for physical gold, and they will send you the bars. So if you want, you can take advantage of this right now because it is a powerful tool. And when you support creators like myself on Rumble, you can tip them directly using that Rumble wallet. It's peer-to-peer, totally outside the banking system. There's no permissions, no middlemen, no cancel button. The wallet is yours forever. So thank you very much to Rumble, wallet.rumble.com, or the App Store on your phone, or you can use that QR code that you see on screen. Also, thank you so much to Bama Bitch for joining as a member over there on Rumble. And thank you to Snowcat Operator for dropping 5 subscriptions on Rumble earlier in the show. Appreciate you, homie. Thank you so much. All right, so couple of different developments in the Iran situation. Late yesterday, there was at least 2 Iranian drones that struck the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And as a result of that, there was a fire. There was a lot of misinformation going around. There were videos that were being shared which were not actually from this event. They were from an event earlier in the year. There was another one from 2024. There was a video of a truck fire, which was pretty spectacular. And of course, it got everybody's jimmies rustling. And so everybody was sharing it. But it was not the actual fire at the embassy. There were also no casualties at the fire at the embassy. Everybody had already been evacuated. But the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh put this out On X, the U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia has issued a shelter-in-place notification for Jeddah, Riyadh, and Dhahran, and are limiting non-essential travel to any military installations in the region. We recommend American citizens in the kingdom to shelter in place immediately. The U.S. Embassy in Riyadh said this on Monday evening, Tuesday morning local time. Now, the Iranian drone strikes in Riyadh came as the State Department urged Americans to leave 14 countries in the Middle East. Currently, the State Department is attempting to work with all Americans that are in these nations so that we can get them out. They are offering a number of different means of transport. Anybody that wants to get out, they want out, and they frankly want everybody who is there to just get out because the situation is pretty untenable at the moment. But the nations where they are urging people to leave are Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, the UAE, and Yemen. Now, Marco Rubio, as the Secretary of State, also put out this announcement on his X account, giving people directions on what to do if you are caught in one of these nations.
At the Department of State, our #1 priority is the safety and the security of American citizens everywhere in the world. Now, with what's going on in the Middle East with Operation Epic Fury and the cowardly attacks that we're seeing from Iran against Gulf countries, I wanted to take this chance to speak directly to Americans who are in the Middle East about the work we are doing to try to keep you safe. So immediately following the beginning of this operation, at my direction, the State Department activated a 24/7 task force, surging personnel and resources necessary to help provide American citizens with up-to-the-minute safety and security information. Now, in order to receive these updates from the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate, you have to register with the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. You have to register with STEP, and here's where you do it. You go to step.state.gov. That's step.state.gov and register so we can reach you. We also encourage Americans abroad to follow our security updates for U.S. citizens channel on WhatsApp and follow @TravelGov on social media as well. The latest alerts are also available on travel.state.gov. That's our website, travel.state.gov. Finally, Americans in the Middle East, you can reach the Department of State 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the following phone number: 1-202-501-4444. That's 1-202.
All right. So hopefully everybody gets out, everybody remains safe, and all of this will come to a swift and brutal conclusion. Now, the U.S. consulate in Dubai was also hit by an Iranian drone strike. This happened just earlier today. This time, the Dubai embassy was also on fire after this drone strike earlier. And according to reports, the consulate, again, was evacuated prior to the strike. There were no injuries that were reported. Got several different pieces of video so you can see what happened.
Dubai. Apparently hit by a suspected Iranian drone. You can see a plume of smoke in the background and people in the foreground taking video and expressing alarm over it.
Now, this is obviously after the Iranian strike, but I do have some footage of the strike as it was happening and people reacting to it in real time. Let me show you that.
Shit.
Shit.
Move. Nikal.
So again, everyone was evacuated. That is good news. Here is Secretary Rubio as he learned about the second consular strike.
As I came in, I also saw the media reports about Dubai's consulate. The last update I had with seconds before getting before these cameras was that a drone unfortunately struck a parking lot adjacent to the Chancellery building and then set off a fire in that place. All personnel are accounted for. As you're aware, we began drawing down personnel from our diplomatic facilities in advance of this. In the cases, for example, of Beirut, we basically drew down to bare bones, as well as in Baghdad and in Erbil and in a couple other posts as well. So we've been very fortunate, obviously, but our embassies and our diplomatic facilities are under direct attack from a terroristic regime.
All right. Oh, thank you so much to Lee Walden. Good to see you, Lee. Hope you've been all right, man. He says, ahoy, Zach, Miss Lisa, and crew. Cliff High would identify our times ahead as the big ugly, when our civilization would be challenged by the wicked madness of humanity. But note, we still have God's grace. Absolutely, my friend. Good to see you again. Now, moving on from the consular strikes, here, actually, this is the same video we just watched. I just realized I had it pulled up twice. We also had President Trump speaking with I believe the Chancellor of Germany, Merz. He was visiting the Oval Office. Now, this is a follow-up to something that I showed you yesterday. Marco Rubio seemed to indicate that the preemptive attack that was perpetrated by the United States on Iran had something to do with the influence of Israel. Now, that was a short clip. Marco Rubio had apparently gone on to expound upon what he said in a little bit more depth, and President Trump was asked about this today during the Oval Office meeting with Merz. And he was asked, did Israel force your hand to launch these attacks against Iran? President Trump said no. Pete Hegseth retweeted it and said this is 100% correct. As I have said, in the fog of war, there gets, a lot of things get said by a lot of different people. And in the social media age, of course, things are going to be clipped, chopped, screwed, pushed out. And we've got to kind of wade through the madness, all of the noise, get the signal out of the noise. But here is President Trump with the answer.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand, but Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact.
Now, of course, the negotiators that he's referring to are his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and then Steve Witkoff, both of whom have been instrumental in the varied negotiations that have gone on throughout the entire world during President Trump's first a year or so in office. Now, just want you to keep what he said in the back of your mind, the idea that he believed Iran was going to strike, that it was inevitable, and so therefore we had to do what we had to do. But President Trump also, from the same meeting here, commenting on the Iranian regime and talking just a little bit more about why it was we did what we did.
A big factor in this world and future factor is what we're doing right now with Iran. If we don't stop them, or if we didn't stop them, or if we didn't start, they've been decimated. But if we didn't do what we're doing right now, you would have had a nuclear war, and they would have taken out many countries, because you know what? They're sick people. They're mentally ill, sick people. They're angry. They're crazy. They're sick.
All right. So the threat of nuclear war, I know that many people are skeptical about this claim because for as long as I've been alive, the idea that Iran was 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon was constantly broadcast over and over and over again. Everybody was saying the same thing. And we went in, of course, last year during Operation Midnight Hammer and took out a number of nuclear enrichment and processing facilities. We were told that that was enough to hold off war at that time. But it also doesn't necessarily mean that those were the only processing facilities. Perhaps those were the only ones that were operational at the time. Now, also, sort of defining what it is that we're actually seeing here, because a lot of people are, of course, upset. The idea that President Trump has dragged us into a war. Many people are looking at this and suggesting that it's going to be just like Iraq or it's going to be just like Afghanistan. The administration has said from a number of different players, President Trump himself, Pete Hegseth, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, all of them are saying the same thing. This is not going to be an endless war. We are not looking at this as a sort of ongoing conflict. We are looking for a swift and brutal resolution. But more importantly, in this list of objectives that the White House published earlier today, right around the same time they delivered their report to Congress on exactly what's going on, they specifically define it as not a war. I find it interesting, because, of course, it is getting into the semantics, the meaning of these words. It's it's funny because it's kind of Clinton-esque. If you'll remember from his deposition during his impeachment many years ago, he answered a question and said, well, it depends on what the meaning of the word is in discussing whether or not he was engaging in sexual relations of any kind with Monica Lewinsky. But this White House press release this weekend, in regard to Operation Epic Fury, this past weekend, President Trump made the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury, major combat operations against the Iranian regime. The objectives are clear and thus: number one, destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. Number two, annihilate their navy. Number three, ensure the regime's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces, and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, which have gravely wounded and killed thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And then finally, number four, ensure that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. While Operation Midnight Hammer obliterated Iran's 3 major nuclear sites, the regime was committed to enriching and rebuilding their nuclear program, and they refused to make a deal, despite months of extensive talks and good faith efforts by President Trump's top negotiators. Now, each of these points of interest, these objectives, have been spoken publicly by President Trump on a number of occasions. And it is true, ever since the destruction of those 3 nuclear enrichment sites, the United States has been involved in negotiations with Iran, and President Trump was continuously updating the American public and speaking to the press and saying that, we're trying to make a deal. We want to make a deal. We don't want war. We want Iran to just say we won't build nukes and everything will be cool and we'll all be friends and we can get along and engage in economic cooperation. But that was simply not happening. I mean, it just kept getting pushed further and further out. It continues by saying, as a byproduct of Operation Epic Fury's success, 49 of the most senior Iranian regime leaders, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, have been wiped off the face of the earth in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury. Bottom line, President Trump should be commended for killing terrorists and finally having the courage to do what American presidents for nearly 50 years have all contemplated but failed to execute. I'd like to add, I don't think that they just contemplated it and failed to execute it. There was a deliberate decision not to execute it because, as I have stated on so many different occasions, Iran as a boogeyman was useful to the deep state as a destabilizing force in the Middle East, exporting terror and funding a number of different groups, including left-wing groups here in the United States. They were continuously causing ripples in the slipstream, if you will. Making problems for us, making problems for people who wanted America to be stable and who wanted the world to be a peaceful, happy place to live. So continuing here, the rogue Iranian regime under the hand of the Ayatollah, which also, of course, was only possible because of the impact of the CIA, MI6, and Mossad back in 1979, has killed and maimed thousands of U.S. soldiers over the years. Their brutal attacks and threats will end under President Donald J. Trump. America will win. The terrorist Iranian regime will be defeated. Not a destruction of Iran, the nation, or the people of Iran, but just their deep state government, which is the way that I see it. So they also have a Q&A section. Is the U.S. at war with Iran? Well, the answer is the president announced major combat operations against Iran with clear, achievable goals. destroy their missiles, raise their missile industry to the ground, and annihilate their navy. So this is also kind of out of the Russian Putin playbook. If you look at the major combat operations or the special military operations that are taking place between Russia and Ukraine, Russia has continually said, this is not a war. I think most people would look at it and say, it looks like a war. But of course, Russia doesn't define it as a war. Instead, they look at it as a defensive mission of the autonomous regions of eastern Ukraine. And they are simply looking for Ukraine to allow them to go ahead and just take care of those areas and enter into security agreements with those people, which are ethnically Russian, who have also, for their entire lives, spoken Russian and been told by the Western EU-backed Kiev government in Ukraine, also CIA deep state-backed government in Kiev, that they can't speak Russian anymore, and it's now a crime, and they can't embrace their heritage or their culture. And, of course, the Western-backed government in Kiev for a long time was sending missiles into those autonomous regions. They killed women and children. They committed war crimes, heinous activity. So I have no problem with what Russia has done over there. And I can totally understand why President Trump has decided to go this route with Iran as well. Now, also adding to the argument for Iran's empowerment as a tool of the deep state, President Trump, during this meeting with MERS, also called out Barack Hussein Obama for the many billions of dollars that he sent over to Iran. And he goes into a little bit more depth in terms of what exactly happened than what we've actually heard from a president or even from the U.S. government. But I think it's something that we already knew.
The other thing was Barack Hussein Obama made maybe the worst deal I've ever seen, because he gave all power in the Middle East to Iran. He went the exact opposite way, and I terminated that. If I didn't terminate that deal, they would be sitting with a massive nuclear weapon 3 years ago, which would have been used already on Israel at least, and other countries also. And we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But if I didn't terminate the deal that Obama made, giving them everything, including plane loads of cash. Do you remember the airplane flew over there? It was a Boeing 757. There was two of them loaded. They took out all the seats. It was loaded with green cash. So much cash that you could, it was in Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. They got all the cash from all the banks. They put it, and they flew it to Iran. I never knew a president had that power. I'm going to maybe try it sometime if it's okay. I think I'm going to do it. I'll fly it somewhere. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Two planes loaded from floor to ceiling, big planes, Boeing 757s, taken over there and given cash. In addition to that, he was giving them billions of dollars, but worse, he was giving them the right to have the path to a nuclear weapon.
All right. So clearly, they were empowered. The Iranian Islamic Republic was empowered by Barack Hussein Obama, himself a CIA candidate, and somebody, in my opinion, who hated the United States of America. I mean, he was literally mentored by left-wing commie terrorists during his youth, in the form of Bernadette and Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground. Now, the U.S. CENTCOM has also released a series of videos showing some of the strikes on Iranian missile batteries and locations throughout the country. What's also kind of funny is this morning, Iran put out a propaganda piece where they trotted out one of their ICBMs, and because they showed this video, they gave up the location of where they were keeping them, and within 6 hours, CENTCOM had completely obliterated them. But take a look at this. Let me just get past the commercial. These are some of the Iranian mobile launchers, which they can basically put anywhere. There's no audio here, but blown to bits. And don't have to worry about it anymore. Here's another site. Get a second hit in for good measure. Okay. And then we have another mobile site down here. All right. Now, this is a mobile missile launcher driving down the highway. Boom. Completely obliterated. God, you just think, I mean, these are IR cameras, and so you've got a tremendous flash of light, and that's why it goes black like that. But this is not somewhere that you want to be on the ground when any of these things go off. All right. And also, we have this announcement from President Trump. Remember, I told you yesterday that insurance companies throughout the Gulf region, well, I mean, there are American insurance companies that are insuring the cargo of these ships and oil tankers, liquid natural gas carriers that are moving through the Straits of Hormuz and taking all of this energy product, like 20% of the world's energy moving through here on a daily basis. China being the number one recipient of Iranian fuel. Iran yesterday had announced a complete shutdown to the Straits of Hormuz. And as a result of that, all of these insurance companies started canceling the policies on these tankers. And there was quite a shock to the markets yesterday as a result. If it was to go on for very long, then it could potentially increase natural gas and fuel prices just around the world overnight. And overnight, gas prices in Europe went up by like 50%. There was quite a bit of anxiety about it. If the Straits of Hormuz close down permanently, then China is totally screwed. That's also probably the reason why they're not intervening on Iran's behalf, because they know they've got to play within the boundaries of this new global order that President Trump is creating. It's also worth mentioning Russia is not intervening on Iran's behalf as well. And I think the majority of people here believe that although the interests of Russia, China, and the United States may not be aligned 100% of the time, all of us are attempting to live our own sovereign way of life without the interference of a system of global governance that is being imprinted upon us by a group of elite satanic pedophiles, just to put it as plainly as possible. So President Trump made the announcement that not only are we, the United States government, through the State Development Finance Corporation, going to provide insurance for these vessels that are moving through the Straits of Hormuz and into the Gulf, we are also going to actually guard the way for them. Navy ships will provide escort services for these ships that are carrying this energy product, regardless of what country they came from. So he said, effective immediately, I have ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation to provide, at a very reasonable price, political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy traveling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the United States Navy will also begin escorting tankers through the Straits of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, this is another example of how President Trump is protecting international trade in order to ensure that the entire world does not fall to its knees as a result of this regional conflict. It could very possibly happen if the United States did not intervene in the way that President Trump is doing so right here, which, again, in my opinion, goes to show you that President Trump truly is operating with the best interests of the world in mind. He's not looking for a forever war that is going to, force the oil companies to raise their prices and collect massive profits over the best interests of citizens, no matter what nation they live in. He's ensuring that things are going to continue on as normal. Now, this is a very interesting clip from Tucker Carlson. I first saw it yesterday, and I never got a chance to play it. But Tucker got a report that a number of Gulf nations had actually intervened, finding that Mossad false flag teams were preparing to lay bombs and explosives at strategic infrastructure targets, which would then be blamed on Iran. Take a listen to this.
Last night, in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested Mossad agents planning on committing bombings in those countries. Now, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the Israelis be committing bombings in two Gulf countries, which are also being attacked by Iran? Aren't they on the same side? No. Israel wants to hurt Iran and Qatar and UAE and Saudi and Bahrain and Oman and Kuwait. Last night.
So yeah, another excellent example of how interests may align. But of course, you're going to have regional players. They're going to do whatever they can to try to get the upper hand over countries that are not necessarily allies, but maybe partners in an action like what we're seeing in Iran right now. And everybody here knows that the Mossad is the textbook kings of false flag operations. They have a long history of doing exactly what Tucker described right there. So I have no doubt in my mind that this report is 100% true. Need to say thank you to Cyrus the Great, who says, now we know why Venezuelan oil was so important to be taken before the Iran strikes. Excellent observation there, Cyrus. Yes, most certainly. Now, we also have a report that earlier today, the Iranian Supreme Council was preparing to meet to choose the official successor to the late Ayatollah Khomeini. And much like the meeting of the other day where everybody had gathered in the same place, they did it again. And this time, IDF forces struck this building location. And apparently, they took out a whole nother group of people. So this was the Iranian Leadership Complex in central Tehran. The meeting took place last night, and it was described as the regime's most central and significant headquarters. So specific targets inside the building included the presidential office and the building which houses the Supreme National Security Council. This is a key body which advises the supreme leader on national security and foreign policy. Other elements of the leadership compound used by top officials for meetings also remain in the building. There are command and control offices and a whole host of related infrastructure. So allegedly, the IDF stated that around 100 fighter jets dropped over 250 munitions on the complex following intelligence collection aimed at degrading Iran's command and control systems. So it was reported that this breaking news took place. A series of cluster munitions impacts were then sent in response into Tel Aviv. I have seen a lot of videos of Iranian cluster munitions going into Israel. I'm not sure about their veracity. I'm seeing community notes saying that it's AI, and I'm seeing other people sharing things that took place, at some point in the past. So I don't have any of those pulled up because I can't verify whether or not it's real. But suffice to say, there does appear to be a bit of back and forth between Iran and Israel, and that's exactly what I would expect. So all of these people are now alleged to be dead in Iran. And we do have some confirmation of this from an Iranian source. So obviously, you've got the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, and I believe all of these people were the ones who were just below him and then in the same building. You've also got the leader of Hezbollah, who allegedly was among those that were killed as well. So no idea at this point who is left in the Iranian government. But this goes along with that Tucker Carlson clip that I played, because there is apparently a rumor that the Iranian general of the Quds Force is actually an Israeli spy himself. He was somebody who was supposed to be in that building the other night when they took out the Ayatollah and all 48 of the other next remaining leaders. And apparently he didn't show up to the meeting. So the rumor is going around that he may likely be an Israeli spy himself. So this individual His name is General Esmail Qaani. He's the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force. He was actually taken into custody by the IRGC because it seemed a little suspect that he failed to show up to the meeting where everybody else died. So the Iranians believe that he may be an Israeli spy. And there are other reports which seem to indicate that Qaani left the Supreme Leader's residence only minutes before the strike actually took place. So, like, he showed up with everybody. They saw that he was there. Then he was like, excuse me, guys, I got to step outside to take a leak. Maybe I got to take a call or something like that. And he hightailed it out of there so that he wouldn't be caught in the crossfire of those missiles. Clearly, there are some questions that need to be answered. I don't think that we're going to get any, to be quite frank with you. The Iranians may announce that, you know, they have taken this guy out as an Israeli spy, but they're not going to be showing any video or, you know, interrogation footage or anything like that. But Esmail Qaani, the commander of the Quds Force, has been detained by the IRGC. This has been confirmed because this is not the first attack that he was able to successfully avoid. Apparently, he is known as the man with 9 lives because he just always seems to be in the right place at the right time. Continues to find his way outside the building when those missiles tend to hit. There have been multiple assassination attempts. A number of other of Iran's most powerful leaders were instead killed, but again, he did not ever die. There was the strike in Lebanon that killed Hassan Nasrallah. I don't even know who that is. There was the operation that eliminated another one by the name of Ismail Haniyeh. There were accusations that was successful because Qaani leaked the intel, which is what enabled the attack. There were the deadly strikes during the 12-day war when Israel got the addresses of all of the generals because of their cell phones, and they sent missiles into all of their houses. The only one they didn't kill was this guy, the leader of the IRGC. And then, of course, the attack that he missed over the weekend where they killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. He left just a moment before the missiles actually hit. So clearly, they are not trusting him in Iran, and they say that he is likely to be a Mossad agent. So we'll find out. I'm certain they are probably going to tell us if something spectacular happens. All right. Now, I want you to go back to what President Trump said about his belief that there was going to be a nuclear strike from Iran or some type of major strike because the Iranians just continuously pushed off the idea of making a deal. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were the ones who were in negotiations with the Iranian foreign minister. That was taking place, I believe it might have been like Geneva or Qatar or something like that, but it was a foreign nation. And so the Iranian foreign minister was able to avoid getting killed along with everybody else. But what's striking is that, and this likely has a lot to do with why President Trump made the decision, Steve Witkoff says that in the first meeting they had at this current round of negotiations, the foreign minister said, yeah, we totally have 460 kilos of 60% enriched uranium, and that would allow us to make 11 nuclear bombs. And he didn't think it was like a problem or anything like that, but obviously it made Steve Witkoff and President Trump pretty nervous.
90% material, Sean, can be brought to 90%. That's weapons grade, in roughly 1 week, maybe 10 days at the outside. The 20% can be brought to weapons grade inside of 3 to 4 weeks. And let me say this because I forgot this small little detail. In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
Probably not the smartest way to start a negotiation, especially when you know that the other side only wants to hear you say, we are not going to do that thing. So it sounds like that is the critical moment, the piece of intel that led to President Trump making the decision. Now, the Iranian foreign minister himself, the man that was in those negotiations, has also admitted that the civilian government, which essentially doesn't exist anymore, is no longer in control of the military. So the question then becomes, who exactly is controlling the military, especially when we learned that the guy who was leading the IRGC has now been arrested as a suspected Mossad agent. So the command and control structure appears to be completely obliterated in Iran. I saw a report earlier that, again, I can't confirm, and it was on Fox News, so, take it with a grain of salt. But they suggested that on the first strikes that Iran's capabilities were reduced by 25%. Then they were reduced by 50%. Now they've been reduced by 75%. There's no way for us to really gauge whether or not that's the truth. I haven't heard President Trump say that, so that's pretty much the reason why I don't take it to heart. But whatever troops are left are currently in the process of being cut off further from each other. And they're also now operating under unsanctioned leadership. It's like you've got a bunch of different groups of people who are like, well, we can't get in touch with anybody who's in charge, so we're either going to have to make a salvo to surrender, or we're just going to have to continue on with the fight on our own. So Aragachi is the foreign minister's name, and in the last couple of days become the face of this regime because he's basically the only person from the civilian government that's left. He's gone on a number of TV shows in the West to defend Iran and do that to the best of his ability. But after that massive decapitation strike, he made a stunning admission that the civilian government of Iran is no longer in control of its own military. And that obviously could lead to a pretty bad situation. So here he is discussing exactly what happened. And we'll go ahead and take a listen.
Well, there might be a risk. I have been in touch with all of them, as I said, especially with Qatar and Oman foreign ministers. I explained for them what happened in Oman was not our choice. We have already told our, armed forces to be careful about the targets that they.
Okay, so he's talking about what happened in Oman. I believe he's referring to an attack that took place, which appears to have come from a wing of the Iranian military that never got the order to do that. They just went out and did it unsanctioned, which, of course, leads to a whole nother box of worms to come spilling out on the ground. If everybody is making their own decisions and nobody's getting orders, then anybody could be a target, and there's really no way to fend it off. And it puts the situation in a much more tenuous place.
They choose. As a matter of fact, our military units are now, in fact, independent and somehow isolated, and they are acting based on instructions, general instructions given to them in advance.
All right, so I would have to believe that in the same, well, I mean, I don't think Iran's military was as disciplined as America's, but I mean, all militaries are going to operate under the same sorts of plotting and planning. They're going to have guidebooks. If you've got situation A, you should behave, with, these directives. If it's situation B, you behave in these directives. If you can't get in a hold of leadership, you should behave like this. I mean, so they've got a whole bunch of different scenarios that they've probably worked out in advance, in the same way that the United States has. Militaries love to war game. They like to plot this stuff out so that in the event of something like a total cutoff of command and control, somebody will still be out there operating. So hopefully this is enough to bring it to a conclusion quickly, because President Trump has said that as a result of the current situation, there's a lot of people who are coming forward, making contact with the United States, and they are requesting a quick surrender.
See what happens. A lot of people are coming forward. A lot of the people you would least suspect want to quit. They want to have immunity. They're asking for immunity, and probably at some point they'll be dropping, as you would say, laying down their guns. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we're just continuing to go forward. Our military is the #1 in the world by far, and we are, everything's big in my book. Venezuela was big, this is big, the original hit, Midnight Hammer, was big, everything you view is big, but it's not considered very big by some standards. See what happens.
Interestingly, also, a United States government-controlled crypto account earlier today transferred like around $3,000 or so of Bitcoin to a wallet which was tracked to the area of Iran. That could very possibly be a bounty paid for intel coming from perhaps somebody within the Iranian military or somebody left over from the Iranian government, like a payoff of sorts for the information. So I saw that. I thought that was kind of neat. Now, getting back to the European situation, MERS was there for a reason. Virtually the entirety of the European Union has pledged support for the United States and the efforts in Iran. They believe that Iran is a major threat to their safety and well-being as well, all but the exception of Spain. Now, Spain has a very radical left-wing government, essentially a communist government, and they have, in large part, been propped up by the Iranian regime. The current government of Spain has a very cozy relationship, or I should say had a very cozy relationship with the Ayatollah. So they have broken with the other European powers, and they are now forbidding the United States to use any of their bases or bases that they have a presence at to launch any attacks or to take off and use Spain as some type of a strategic point. So they're distancing themselves from this escalating conflict and refusing to allow any American forces to use any of the jointly operated bases that are on Spanish soil. So these are not bases that the United States would be taking from Spain. I mean, they're places where we already have soldiers, but it is a major divergence from all of the other nations of Europe because they've all signaled a willingness to back up what they describe as a proportionate defensive action. We do have flight tracking radar data from Flight Radar 24 showing there were at least 15 American aircraft that had departed from the Rota Naval Base and Moran Naval Air Base in southern Spain following the attacks over the weekend. Several of those aircraft were identified as KC-135 Stratotanker aerial refueling planes. I'm sure you also probably saw the B-52 footage that was released over the weekend by CENTCOM and the White House showing the B-52s being refueled mid-flight. At least 7 of the aircraft were tracked and landed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Others were seen heading towards France. Some of their flight paths were also not publicly visible, so they went off radar and who knows where they went. But the Spanish Foreign Minister, José Manuel Albaraz, made Madrid's position explicit. The bases in Spain are not being used, nor will they be used, for anything that is not in the agreement with the U.S., nor for anything that isn't covered by the UN Charter. Albaraz also emphasized that while Spain supports democracy and fundamental rights for the Iranian people, it rejects military action that falls outside international legal frameworks. He said Europe's voice must be one of balance and moderation at this time, working towards de-escalation and a return to the negotiating table. The defense minister, Margarita Robles, reinforced that same message, stating categorically that Spain had provided no assistance to the strikes. She argued that the bilateral agreement governing American forces in Spain must operate within the framework of international law. What is clear is that the tanker aircraft have not carried out and were not going to carry out any support operations, and she suggested that Washington's decision to relocate the aircraft was a reflection of Spain's stance. The socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has gone even further. He's condemned what he called unilateral military action by Washington and Jerusalem. He warned that the offensive was contributing to a more hostile and uncertain international order. He gave a speech in Barcelona And he sought to draw a distinction between opposing Iran's regime and rejecting open-ended escalation. You can be against a hateful regime and at the same time against an unjustified and dangerous military intervention that is outside international law. Now, the refusal by Spain does make it a singular outlier in the larger subset of European powers. France, Germany, and the UK have all adopted a far firmer tone towards Tehran following the Iranian missile and drone retaliatory strikes across the Gulf. They put out a joint statement. French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz all declared, "We will take steps to defend our interests and those of our allies in the region, potentially through enabling necessary and proportionate defensive action to destroy Iran's capability to fire missiles and drones at their source." Now, Keir Starmer got special attention from President Trump. He spoke about him during Merz's visit to the Oval Office because Starmer had initially hesitated to permit U.S. forces to use British bases, but he was forced to reverse course after Iranian retaliation reportedly struck a facility owned by the UK in Cyprus. Didn't get a chance to talk about that, but a drone struck this UK base on the island of Cyprus because there is some U.S. infrastructure there. President Trump criticized Starmer's delay, saying that Britain had taken too long to grant access. Now, Merz is currently in Washington meeting with President Trump. He said Germany would not lecture their partners over the strikes. Despite all doubts, we share many of their aims. Spain is taking a different path altogether, and he has condemned Iran's absolutely unjustified attacks on Gulf countries and Cyprus and any EU partner that is currently holding the bloc's rotating presidency, but insisted the solution lies in diplomacy rather than escalation. Madrid has also summoned the Iranian ambassador, who is named Reza Zabib, to formally convey its rejection of the actions by Tehran. Spanish officials have stressed that the safety of approximately 30,000 Spanish nationals living in the region is, of course, a top priority. Robles confirmed that more than 1,000 Spanish troops have been deployed across Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey, and they're taking heightened security precautions. You've got nearly 700 personnel in Lebanon who are serving under the UNIFIL mission. Reportedly, they spent the night in bunkers amid the renewed exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah. The European Commission has also called for a diplomatic resolution, and Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has urged preparation for the fallout from these recent events. The fallout is pretty much already visible. You've got disrupted airspace, rising energy uncertainty, and growing instability in the region. Spain is also arguing that escalation breeds further escalation. Albarez warned that a logic of violence only spreads to a spiral of violence, adding that unilateral actions without UN endorsement lack a clear objective. F the UN. The UN is totally illegitimate. Now, in response to that, President Trump has announced that we are no longer playing with Spain. He has cut off all trade with Spain after the government has refused to let us use our own bases in the country to strike Iran. So let's go ahead and hear from President Trump because he made this announcement rather off the cuff during that meeting earlier today.
In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody.
Spain is the only country who's not paying their NATO dues. And it should be no surprise because they're commies. They want everybody else to pay for them.
And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases. And that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it, but we don't have to. But they were unfriendly. And so I told him we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain.
Yeah, F around and find out. That's just the way that it is. So He went on to say that Spain is going to pay a horrible price because they are no longer going to be trade partners with the United States. The American people needs nothing from Spain. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need. We're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain. Here is President Trump speaking further on it.
Everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody, and Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just.
Sorry, this is the same clip. I thought President Trump was going into more depth. Maybe this is the one.
But the right was given to us by the Supreme Court, and we have the right, as an example, we talked about Spain. I could tomorrow stop, or today, even better, stop everything having to do with Spain. All business having to do with Spain. I have the right to stop it.
What do we get from Spain? Anybody know? Is there anything that we import that is exclusively from Spain? Maybe Spanish olives? I don't know.
Embargoes, do anything.
Paella? Do we even get paella from Spain?
I want with it, and we may do that with Spain. What do you think?
Well, sir, I think we're going to talk about it with you. I know that you have strong power. The Supreme Court clarified. We know you can use it, and if you need to use it to assure national and economic security, we'll do it.
Scott, do you have an opinion?
Sir, I agree. The Supreme Court reaffirmed your ability to implement an embargo, and as we've talked, from your first term, the Section 301s and the 232s have withheld more than 4,000 lawsuits, and USTR and Commerce are going to begin investigations.
Beans, peanuts, maybe some rice. We can get all of that from down here, though.
And we'll move forward with those.
And we've instituted a 15% tariff on everybody, as you know, and just used, I'll tell you.
Cured meat, yep, absolutely.
We had a couple of paragraphs written in that opinion that were really incredible. Justice Kavanaugh wrote a fantastic dissent, but in his dissent, he
all right. From You Got That Base. Spain's top exports to the United States include chemicals, machinery, olive oil, pharmaceuticals, with total goods trade valued at over $20 billion annually. Major categories also include refined Google. Yes. Okay. You're saying I could have found it on Google. I know I could. But thank you very much for doing the work for me. That's why I love the interaction with the live chat. But yes, I think that Spain is obviously going to get the raw end of the deal when it comes to the United States cutting off all trade. And who knows, maybe there are some things that they definitely require which are coming from the United States.
He said what we should do, and we knew that too.
The Nunn Report. Thank you very much for rating the stream. I really do appreciate it.
Just wanted to simplify it, and for some reason, I think, very, very foolishly, the courts decided no, but they said you can do it many other ways, and that's what we're doing. And what we've done is we've gone to a very simple, straight 15% tariff. We've taken in hundreds.
Don't worry, we still get plenty of olive oil from Italy, from Greece. I don't think I buy Spanish olive oil. I'm pretty sure that I'm buying Greek olive oil.
Of billions of dollars in our country because of tariffs. So we've taken in all of this money, hundreds of billions of dollars. And
Cisco, Spanish fly. I thought Bill Cosby was the #1 importer of that.
Honestly, it's made us very rich as a country. Right? So it's been doing good. When will you have?
Oh, yes. Lee, yes. Spaghetti Westerns. Yeah, I think that plenty of them were filmed in Spain. Also, though, they were called spaghetti westerns because largely they were filmed in Italy. But Spain is one of those locations. Ali also says, let's consider who wants to supply Iran with what it needs to create chaos. Once identified, the battle for our children's future will be resolved. We stand in the breach, stay the course. MAGA. Thank you so much, Lee. All right. Now, obviously, President Trump is not playing games. And as I said, he was also giving some direct criticism to Keir Starmer. During that same meeting, he said, I am not happy with Starmer. He's pandering to Muslim voters. As you all know, Muslims, Islamists have largely taken over the United Kingdom, which is one of the reasons that we need to ensure that, restore Britain, restore UK. What is his name? Rupert. I showed that video of him maybe 2 weeks ago. Was it Rupert Lowe? Yes, Rupert Lowe. And restore Britain. Restore Britain. I like Britain better than I like UK, but I'm not from the UK. So I guess we've got some British patriots in the chat. Maybe Britain is obviously one country within the United Kingdom, and then you've got the others. So UK is encompassing all of them. So anyways, President Trump, for the first time since World War II, the United States has entered a military conflict without its most staunch and reliable ally, the United Kingdom. Failing Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who I can't even believe is still in office after all of this crap with the Epstein files having been revealed. He's under heavy pressure for choosing to keep Britain out of the operations, even though the base in Cyprus was attacked by the Iranians. So now President Trump and the Pentagon are openly and very harshly criticizing Keir Starmer, the radical left-wing leader of the UK. Here is a quote from President Trump. He said he's very disappointed in Keir Starmer after the UK refused to allow the use of British bases for offensive actions. While American forces moved decisively, Starmer is talking about unlawful action and refusing to commit British support. At a moment when U.S. personnel, allies, and the Western interests are under attack, Washington is acting, London is hesitating. The special relationship has always been built on trust, strength, and standing shoulder to shoulder in times of crisis. Right now, that unity looks fractured. Trump is signaling resolve. Starmer is signaling weakness. History will judge which approach carries weight and when it matters most. Let's take a listen. Here is Keir Starmer commenting on the situation.
And I will not commit our military personnel to unlawful action. That is not what they would expect and deserve. They are entitled to better than that.
All right. And here he is on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. I believe that is a British paper. I am very disappointed in Keir. The name Keir, that is something. All right. And in addition to that, the Telegraph reported in their article, Donald Trump has suggested that Sir Keir Starmer did not join the attack on Iran because he is pandering to Muslim voters. When asked if Sir Keir had stayed out of the initial attack because he's afraid of being punished by Muslim voters at the ballot box, Mr. Trump told The Sun, could be. This comes after Trump said he was very disappointed for not taking part. Sir Keir rebuked Mr. Trump on Monday afternoon by telling MPs that military action in the Middle East had to be lawful and thought through. In the meantime, the Pentagon aired its wrath at Starmer for his pearl clutching over the U.S.-Israel attacks on Iran. Former allies, pearl clutching, hand-wringing. This is Pete Hegseth's summation of Keir Starmer. How very damning and how very accurate. Please, God, do not let America judge us by the pussy that is the British Prime Minister no one wants. From the Daily Mail, the Prime Minister was accused of undermining the special relationship by banning American bombers from using British bases to launch Saturday's assault on Tehran. Here is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth commenting on that pearl clutching.
To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right.
I love that.
This is the opposite. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes. Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history.
Gotcha. All right. Now, let's see. Lee Walden also says, we got the spaghetti westerns from Spain. I think The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars. Clint Eastwood got his shit from there. I know that some of them were filmed in Spain, and I'm pretty sure some of them were filmed in Italy. Lee Walden says, Zach, my friend asked about New Israel or something like that for their occupation. Please explain. I assume your friend is referring to the Greater Israel Project, which is essentially Israel's plan to expand their borders into a number of existing sovereign nations. That would, of course, necessarily require the complete takeover of both Gaza and the West Bank. President Trump's historic peace deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis has, unfortunately for them, put a big damper on that plan. It will be impossible for that plan to be implemented because President Trump is ensuring that the Palestinian people have a permanent home there in the Gaza Strip. So the rebuilding of Gaza, with the assistance of all of those partner Muslim nations in the region, is going to make the Greater Israel Project impossible. And also the Ben Gurion Canal can't exist in the form that they've planned on it. So if that's what your friend is talking about, that's not what this is going to lead to. I think that, it's not possible. It's not possible. And as I said, it would require the Israeli takeover of a whole bunch of land, which is currently occupied by other nations. So the United States is not going to support that. All right. So, so that's done for that. Sorry, I got sidetracked. But please review and share Pete Hegseth has for the Boy Scouts. Oh, yes. So the Pentagon has forced the Boy Scouts to essentially once again be for boys and not for girls. The Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts are going to be exactly what they have always traditionally been, and the Pentagon was not going to have anything to do with them unless they did. So just a return to the good old sensible Boy Scouts of yore, but without all of the molestation. Of course, that is not something that can be tolerated. All right, so I need to give a couple of thank yous to our friends over here on Pilled as well. Thank you so much to 123SKG for the can. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says, Illinois in shock. Caterpillar packs up for Texas. Governor explodes. This wasn't sudden. It was political theater. It was math. After years of raising taxes, strict regulation, and mounting pension debt, Caterpillar chose Texas. I can't blame them. And hopefully the people of Illinois will take that into account the next time they vote. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. No thanks, Joe. Thank you for the cookie as well. Hey, Lisa and Zach, I hope you guys had a nice weekend. Seems to me that those pallets of cash were an emergency disbursement for services offered and the thoughts that she would never lose. Election interference possibility. God bless you both. Be safe. So yes, Barack Obama's stated reason for giving that cash to Iran was because it was part of a pre-existing deal with the government of the Shah before the Islamic Revolution, and that money was supposed to be part of a security agreement. Of course, all deals would have been off after a new government came in and took over the state. But the real reason for that was to ensure that Iran would remain a funder of terrorism, would be able to move that much closer to having nuclear weapons. And in doing so, they would always remain a threat within the region, causing instability, and give the United States security state, the deep state, the intel apparatus, a reason to keep Americans afraid and a reason to keep spending money on endless foreign wars in the Middle East. Filter Dog, thank you for the shades. He says, what do you think about Mr. Poole? Mr. Poole is just some dude on Twitter who posts things that are already out there. So I don't have any particular opinion on Mr. Poole. Sean Joe, thank you for 3 more cookies. I appreciate that. All right. So Lee Walden says, Zach, you're the man. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. All right. So now we got to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and a couple of things related to our gal Cheryl Mills that we just spoke about. Before we do, very brief message from our friends over here on a Rumble. You guys have probably noticed, if you're on Rumble, Rumble is growing very fast. They're not slowing down anytime soon. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there's Rumble Premium. It's an easy way to upgrade your experience. With Rumble Premium, you get ad-free viewing across this platform, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content you came for. Plus, premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and a lot more from your favorite creators. I stream myself playing video games and hang out with the chat a couple of times a month. That's a lot of fun. Right now, also, Rumble is offering a $10 off deal on an annual subscription. You can pick that up by going to rumble.com/premium, use the code STUDIO at checkout, and you'll get $10 off that membership. Rumble.com/premium, use the promo code STUDIO, and you'll have no ads, more freedom, and content you actually care about. That is the deal. Thank you very much. Okay, so continuing. One thing that was absolutely stunning to come out in these Epstein files was an email where Jeffrey Epstein takes he literally takes credit for having killed Cold Fusion. Okay? Jeffrey Epstein, the guy who made a name for himself as a so-called billionaire philanthropist, funding science and technology projects, of course, including eugenics projects, gene editing, pandemic preparedness, so to speak. He was hanging out with Bill Gates planning for the COVID pandemic. He also, in this email, says that he is the one who was responsible for killing the cold fusion research of Pons and Fleischmann. Now, I didn't see this until today. I had no reason to even think about anything related to Pons and Fleischmann in the Epstein files or even cold fusion. Never saw it being talked about at all. But in this email, it talks about exactly that. It is a stunning revelation. Not only was Jeffrey Epstein an intelligence operative, not only was he running the largest blackmail ring in the world, selling information to the highest bidder, working on behalf of the CIA, on behalf of the Mossad. Not only was he also trafficking children around the world for the sick pleasures of the global elite, he also was responsible for robbing the people of the world of clean, limitless, free energy in the form of cold fusion. So we can see in this email from October 1st of 2009, this is 1 year after his conviction for pandering to children, Epstein writes to his associate Al Seckel, and he says, regarding cold fusion, I killed Pons years ago. Seckel asks him, how did you kill him? Well, Epstein answers, and he names a specific congressman, a specific fight regarding funding for the cold fusion research, and the head of the Mormon Church. You can see this right here, Al Seckel, regarding cold fusion. I killed Pons years ago. How did you kill him? There is still a group of these guys going strong. Of course, there are researchers that are still carrying on the legacy of Pons and Fleischmann, and people are still working with their research. But what happened was they completely dismantled the idea of their research having any actual value or applicable usages. They basically went out there and did a media blitz calling Pons and Fleischmann hucksters and grifters, and their funding dried up and cold fusion became a distant memory. Epstein described how he lobbied Congress against the funding for Pons's research at the University of Utah. He spoke specifically about the Democratic representative for Utah, Wayne Owens, and he claims he even met with the leadership of the Mormon Church, of the LDS Church, because it was BYU, Brigham Young University's competing cold fusion program that ran through the governance of the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church was actually funding it themselves. So this, in my opinion, was an effort to destroy a legitimate opportunity for the entire world to have access to clean, limitless energy because it would be too disruptive to the current state of energy dominance. And again, see right here, don't leave me hanging, Jeff. I want to know your relationship to ponds and cold fusion. The original Senate funding came out of Congress, and Wayne Owens, senator from Utah, senator, not representative, pardon me, I was there and argued against it. I had to meet with the head of the Mormon Church. Just tell me, what the hell was Jeffrey Epstein doing, having anything to do with cold fusion research? If I had to guess, the only reason that Jeffrey Epstein had access to the people who oversaw the funding or could kill something like this, it's because he caught these people in his blackmail operation, and he clearly controlled them. So Wayne Owens, senator from Utah, that's going to be the next person that I'll be digging in. And of course, you know, the Mormon Church, they've got their own problems when it comes to the victimization of children as well. Now, Al Seckel, he was the man that was communicating with Jeffrey Epstein. He was actually evaluating cold fusion devices for someone who was at Google. He says one of the Google guys. So I don't know if that was like Larry Page or one of those guys. But he was sitting on the board of Milliken's Knowledge Universe and was about to moderate a panel at the Kodak Theater with the president of CNN on this very topic. He said, "Are we transitioning from an age of information into an age of misinformation?" He had an argument. He said, people who want to issue healthcare advice start a website and are a civilizational threat. You can see it all right here. All right, so Al Seckel writes to Jeffrey Epstein, "How you doing? Congratulations on your labeling. I had the badge of distinction given to me by every female I have wanted to be with. I am moderating a panel later this month at the Kodak Theater on the topic, are we transitioning from an age of information into an age of misinformation, and what can we do about it? My panelists will include John Klein, president of CNN, Ariana Huffington, she was the founder of the Huffington Post, Caprice Young, the CEO of Milliken's Knowledge Universe, Jeff Pulver, and Peter Hirschberg. Should be an interesting and important discussion. People, for the most part, have been concentrating on the quantity and efficiency of information, but not on the quality of that information. You can see here they were getting started with this many years before they started actually rolling out the sort of misinfo label on people. We have had a vast democratization of information where everything is leveled out regardless of merit. This is not a good thing. Now, anyone can be anything. Post and transmit anything. Bad enough about misinformation transmitted, but now there is an active disinformation that is rapidly transmitted. We are losing sight of information filters. Current mediums, such as Twitter, lose the essential core of information, which is context. Anyway, that's the theme of the discussion. I wanted to bring the attention to this issue to your attention. Otherwise, evaluating a cold fusion device from one of the Google guys. It's nuts, won't work, but I am saving their asses from investing millions into this junk science. So here is another opportunity. Perhaps at one point, the men behind Google, before they had been completely compromised by Jeffrey Epstein, they were thinking about, allegedly, bringing to market one of these cold fusion devices, and Jeffrey Epstein's man on the inside goes in there and convinces them to not do it, just like Jeffrey Epstein convinced the Senate and Brigham Young University and the Mormon Church to stop funding cold fusion research in the state of Utah. Lately, there has been a new outbreak of energy devices promising clean, renewable energy, but they are crackpots. They look scientific. They have enough scientific and technical jargon to fool the educated person, but not the expert. At least I am getting paid doing this type of physics. Well, Al, did that ever work out for you, Al? I don't think so. It never did. Nothing ever happened. Al Seckel never gave us any sort of research that I'm aware of. Now, Al Seckel died in 2015. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Al Seckel was at one time the brother-in-law of none other than Ghislaine Maxwell. He was married to her sister. And in 2015, Al Seckel died when he mysteriously fell off a cliff in France. Now, his death has never been ruled a suicide or a murder. In fact, it's still an open investigation. The French police have been famously tight-lipped ever since Al took that tumble and landed on the rocks below. Well, he finishes up by saying, if you are up for a chat, let me know. Cheers, me. Later today? Yeah, later today. And that's when he goes in and tells him that he was responsible for killing Pons and Fleischman's research. And the opening line of Al Seckel's October 14th email to Jeffrey Epstein, who at this time, again, is a registered sex offender, congrats on your labeling. What does that mean? That's the network. A man who killed scientists' careers, a man who decided which science billionaires should fund, and the intellectual blueprint for information control a decade before we saw it really rolling out during the 2020 election season. Absolutely fascinating. Every source that is mentioned in this, this guy, Jim Sayer, I think his name is, he writes an article about it, and you can actually see it. Now, there is still Pons and Fleischman research that is being done out there. And years ago, I actually interviewed a man who was working with a company called Brillouan, and they had developed a cold fusion device that they were releasing on a sort of small scale to use it in boiler technology. And I've talked about them a number of times. Brillouan, I think that's how you spell it. No, I forgot the R. There we go. Brillouan Energy. I forgot an I. All right, so I need to check back in with James and see how they're doing and if this has actually come out. God, the last thing that they released was a year ago. Cold fusion may be viable energy alternative to end reliance on fossil fuels. So they have, it was 2 years before that they had put something out, but this came out in an article in The Guardian. Okay, and they talk about Martin Fleischman, who passed away in 2012. And it doesn't look like they make specific mention for the Brillouan technology, but they're just talking about the challenges to the development of an LENR, low energy nuclear reaction technology. But let me see. I wonder if we have like a video or something I can pull up. They have testing results you can see here. If you guys want to check out their website, I will put this link into the chat. But I'm going to check in with James, and I'm going to see what's the status of this technology, because they have it. They've got cold fusion technology, and one of the reasons they hadn't rolled it out large scale is because they were all too aware of the dangers of what they were doing. And their plan was to get it out on a small scale, have people accept that the technology existed, and then to scale it up for other things. I would. Oh yeah, here's an introduction video. There we go.
Fossil fuels just aren't working. We're doing to this planet something that this planet wasn't designed for.
Civilization needs a new energy technology. LENR, I think, is probably the most viable technology.
It's not cold fusion.
It's not a chemical reaction.
It's a reaction of certain metals, nickel, palladium, with hydrogen.
We have patented a control system that actually starts and stops the reaction when you...
So this is also very important. Due to the danger of the research, James had said, like, we do not want to call it cold fusion because there is this sort of there's like a pall over the idea of cold fusion based on what they did to Pons and Fleischman, the way they destroyed their careers and destroyed their research. They believed that calling it cold fusion would not only put them in jeopardy, their lives and their work in jeopardy, but of course people would immediately hear cold fusion and they would say, oh no, it's got to be fake. So they have classified it in their discussions as something entirely different, which is LENR, the low energy nuclear reaction. But it's different from a traditional nuclear reaction But it does create energy which is greater than the source input.
Needed to. This is the breakthrough that this technology has needed for the last 25 years.
If we succeed in our number one goal of making this technology actually work on any commercial type of basis, it would change the conversation about how we make energy.
They had done an experiment with an electrolytic cell using a palladium cathode, and I thought, palladium, there's something interesting about palladium. One of the engineers I was working with said they use that to filter hydrogen. I said, helium won't go through? And he said, no, helium won't go through. Well, turns out that helium is actually about half the size of hydrogen. And then I remembered, oh yeah, they use palladium for the proton exchange membrane in fuel cells on the Apollo missions. That's when I said, I know what's going on, and if nobody's done it in 10 years, I'll build a reactor myself. And I started really moving in the direction of figuring out exactly what it was going to take to implement the physics that actually drives the under.
Anyways, I need to check in with James. I need to see like where this is at, because I haven't heard anything about any products other than when James came on the show and told us about it. But yeah, the last time that they published anything was in February of last year. The last time they published anything before that was in February of 2023. Last time they posted before that was in August of 2022, when they were discussing the application of their first product, which was going to be the hydrogen hot tub technology, which essentially is a boiler. All right, so this is real, and we could be so far ahead in terms of humanity if all of these technologies, which, you know, whatever you want to call them, free energy, ether technology, Tesla technology, breakthrough energy, over unity, all of it's real. And it's been stolen, suppressed, and taken away from us so that we would remain trapped within the current energy paradigm. It's completely unacceptable. Yeah, JD Irish, that's who I'm talking about right now. All right, now we need to talk about Cheryl. Oh, Denise Ann says, Zach, I just found this BLM Lake County founder beats his employee. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick, because we did mention BLM earlier in the program. All right, so the founder of BLM Lake County caught on camera beating the shit out of his black employee in front of a Black Lives Matter sign is incredibly on brand. Even less surprising, he assaulted her for calling him out for mishandling the organization's money. So, yes, this guy had essentially stolen grant money, which is exactly what each and every one of these chapters has gotten in trouble for. What's even funnier, though, is that she gets the upper hand and she ends up dragging him to the ground and beating his ass. She's like, oh, no. And he tries to go back for seconds, and she gets him down, and she just takes him out. He doesn't even get her wig off or anything like that. And it looked like maybe she had something in her hand, like scissors or something like that at the beginning. But yes, highly entertaining. And once again, I'm not surprised to see that happening. All right, so Cheryl Mills. When I first started seeing the clips of the Clintons and their depositions, I was like, God, that woman looks so familiar. And I was like, wait a second, that's Cheryl Mills. Like 2 weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, I read you guys an email between Cheryl Mills and Ghislaine Maxwell. This was back in, like, I want to say, like, maybe 1999 or something like that. Cheryl Mills and Ghislaine Maxwell were good friends. They were emailing each other about Ghislaine's birthday and about Ghislaine making Cheryl jealous because she was on the beach and Cheryl wasn't. And I could not help but wonder if the members of the committee were aware of Cheryl Mills and Ghislaine Maxwell's relationship. I don't think they were, because none of the questions that I've seen so far were related to the relationship that they had. But Cheryl Mills has been present throughout the entirety of the Clinton dynasty. She was a former chief of staff for Hillary Clinton, and she was given immunity during the FBI's investigation of Hillary Clinton's private bathroom email server, the unsecured email server, which also contains special access program intelligence, which is intelligence that is only given in a physical form inside of a SCIF. Hillary Clinton didn't have a SCIF in her bathroom. This is the same scandal which led to the release of the Podesta emails, which also led to BlackBerry Gate, Hillary Clinton's employees smashing their BlackBerries with hammers. Jason Chaffetz back then was on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and he was one of those people who exposed the fact that federal investigators had given Cheryl Mills a pass. Now, what's funny about this is usually people are given immunity because they're going to testify or give information against another person, like a bigger fish. But as everybody knows, James Comey buried the Hillary Clinton email investigation. They also buried the Anthony Weiner laptop, which was directly connected to this. The Anthony Weiner laptop was brought up during Hillary Clinton's deposition. And of course, the relationship between Ghislaine Maxwell and Bill Clinton was brought up. I wish somebody would have brought up the fact that Cheryl Mills and Ghislaine Maxwell had a relationship. I think that there's a very specific reason why they used Cheryl Mills as their attorney, because she has literally been present for so many of the Clinton scandals. The FBI gave Cheryl Mills and a bunch of other people deals, and I don't know, we have no idea what the conversation was like when they spoke to the FBI, but certainly nothing ever happened to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton should be in prison as far as I'm concerned. Now, take a look at this. David Kendall was also a lawyer for Hillary Clinton. He was also the other lawyer that was present during this deposition at the oversight hearing. But their presence in the Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton saga goes all the way back to Bill Clinton's impeachment. Of course, she was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, and she was involved in Benghazi. She was involved in all of the email scandals. On May 8th, 2014, the U.S. House Select Committee on Benghazi was established to investigate the Benghazi attack and therefore sought documents from the State Department as part of their investigation. In the summer of 2014, State Department officials contacted Cheryl Mills, who served as the former Secretary Clinton's chief of staff and counselor, concerning the State Department's inability to locate Clinton and other former secretaries' emails to respond to these congressional requests. Mills later told the FBI that she suggested the State Department officials search State Department systems for Hillary Clinton's clintonemail.com email address. In addition, Mills told the FBI that State Department officials requested that she produce former Secretary Clinton's emails and advised her that it was Clinton's or Mills' obligation to filter out personal emails from what was provided to the state. Former Secretary Clinton and Mills and Clinton's personal attorney, David Kendall. David Kendall represented both of them while they were being questioned by the FBI, and then was also there for the deposition last week to oversee the process of providing her emails to the State Department. In late summer of 2014, Mills contacted Paul Combetta. Paul Combetta was an employee at the company that administered Clinton's private email server. He was also known as Stone Tier. He's the guy who went on Reddit and asked a question about how do I delete all of these emails from a very, very important person. And that's where he learned about BleachBit. And then he deleted everything. Of course, he was initially just talking about deleting the personal emails, but everybody figured out that it would just be so much easier if all of Clinton's emails just completely disappeared. Now, he had requested he was asked to transfer the copies of Clinton's emails onto Cheryl Mills' personal laptop and a laptop belonging to Heather Samuelson, a lawyer who had served in the State Department as Secretary Clinton's White House liaison. Mills, Samuelson, and Kendall then developed a methodology for Samuelson to cull former Secretary Clinton's work-related emails from her personal emails to produce her work-related emails for the State Department. In October and November of 2014, State Department sent letters to 4 former secretaries of state, which included Hillary Clinton, requesting that they make available copies of any federal records in their possession, such as emails sent or received on a personal email account while serving as Secretary of State. In December 2014, former Secretary Clinton produced to the State Department from her personal email account approximately 55,000 hard copy pages, representing approximately 30,000 emails that she believed to be related to official business. After they received those emails, the State Department, in addition to responding to the House Benghazi Committee's document request, reviewed Clinton's emails for potential public release in response to Freedom of Information Act requests, and as described, Mills, Samuelson, and Gambetta, the guy stoned here, told the FBI in late 2014 or early 2015 that Mills and Samuelson asked Gambetta to remove former Secretary Clinton's emails from their laptops. Gambetta then used the commercial software BleachBit to permanently remove or wipe Secretary Clinton's emails from Mills and Samuelson's laptop. Mills told the FBI that at some point between November of 2014 and January of 2015, Hillary Clinton decided she no longer wished to retain on her server emails that were older than 60 days, and Mills instructed Gambetta to change Clinton's email retention policy. Accordingly, Gambetta, however, failed to do so until late March of 2015. So Hillary Clinton, Cheryl Mills, and Bill Clinton are birds of a feather. You lay down with dogs, you get fleas, and they are longtime criminal co-conspirators. I really wish they would have asked about her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. But Bill Clinton says here in this clip that he was better friends with Ghislaine Maxwell than Jeffrey Epstein. And that's because he was friends with the Rothschilds. Now look at Cheryl Mills' face when he says this to the committee.
She stated that President Clinton was her friend, not Epstein's friend. Is that accurate?
I'd say that it was accurate to say that I felt closer to her than to him.
And for the record, why was that?
Because I had seen her more, and because she was very good friends with Evelyn Rothschild and his wife Lynn, whom I knew and was in regular touch with.
Now, first of all, before he starts to answer that question, you see Cheryl Mills close her eyes because she knows that Hillary Clinton had already been asked about the Rothschilds. If you remember, there are emails between Hillary and Rothschild where she basically is speaking to her as if she is some type of a puppy dog or something like that. And she has kind of denied the relationship that clearly existed. We can see from the emails. But as soon as Bill Clinton says Rothschild, you see Cheryl Mills' chest begin to rise and fall, because she knows that this is not something that we need out there. Bill, you can't say that. You don't want to go talking about the Rothschilds, especially when the committee is planning to ask Hillary Clinton about Frazzle Drip and Pizzagate and all of these scandals that have come before that. Just watch this one more time and pay attention to Cheryl Mills.
That it was accurate to say that I felt closer to her than to him.
And for the record, why was that?
Because I had seen her more, and because she was very good friends with Evelyn Rothschild and his wife Lynn, whom I knew and was in regular touch with.
She said
Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, who Hillary Clinton was also in regular communications with. Now, take a look at this clip from Representative Eric Burleson. Now, Bill Clinton was also asked about Mark Middleton. Mark Middleton, if you've been watching the show for long enough, you'll remember he was the former staffer for Bill Clinton who was responsible for allowing Jeffrey Epstein to come into the White House on some 17 occasions. He's also the same man that was discovered deceased on a property connected to the Clintons in 2022, hanging from a tree from a extension cord in apparently an attempt to kill himself by hanging, but also with a so-called self-inflicted shotgun blast to the chest. Now, When that death was first announced, it was very suspicious because it was immediately ruled a suicide. However, the scene was not congruent with a suicide. Middleton supposedly hung himself from a tree, from an extension cord, and then also shot himself in the chest with a shotgun. Now, if that were the case, you would expect for a shotgun to be rather close to the scene of his body hanging from a tree, but it wasn't. It was found some 30 feet away in a bush. It wasn't even possible for Mr. Middleton to have that shotgun and to do that himself. Now, you couldn't tell from the actual questioning, and I'm not going to play the questioning. I'll just play Representative Burleson's reaction to it. But I couldn't tell who it was that was asking the question. But I really like this guy, and I'm glad that it was him. Take a listen.
To Mark Middleton, who was Clinton's staffer that signed Jeffrey Epstein in when he visited the White House 17 times, and the suspicious death around Mark Middleton. This is the individual that, after the revelations occurred, committed suicide by both hanging himself and shooting himself with a shotgun. I asked the president in the politest way possible if he had any knowledge about whether or not that was more than just a suicide, and he did not. It's just interesting that everyone that could have something to say it has committed suicide in a very mysterious way, right? Whether it's Jeffrey Epstein himself or Virginia Roberts or Mark Middleton, there seems to be a lot of suicides that surround the Clintons, not just with the Epstein, but in all of their past history.
Yes. You can go back and look at so many alleged suicides connected to the Clintons. I've done countless shows going over these deaths, both here on my channel and on Badlands. Just the number of deaths that are connected to the Clintons is staggering. But the number of suspicious suicides is statistically impossible to be a series of suicides. It just does not compute. Now, also connected to Mark Middleton was the death of another young woman before his alleged suicide. She went missing, and she was discovered at the bottom of a river with an extension cord tied to her leg, also tied to a cinder block. She had allegedly gone kayaking and then dumped this over the edge and killed herself like that. Another one that simply doesn't make sense. She was working with Mark Middleton and then allegedly committed suicide. And then not that long after that, Mark Middleton allegedly commits suicide himself. I don't know her connection to Jeffrey Epstein or any of that stuff, but certainly she was in the Clinton orbit. Now, also, here is Bill Clinton admitting in his testimony that he brought as a special guest on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express current Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Now, we've heard a lot about the brother of J.B. Pritzker, Tom Pritzker, who had a very close and cozy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and who has been alleged to have committed some heinous acts through his commission of this relationship. But this was the first time I had ever heard J.B. Pritzker's name brought up. So what's also interesting about it is that the office of the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, has responded to Bill Clinton's under oath testimony that he brought Governor J.B. Pritzker on the Lolita Express. Let's take a listen to Bill Clinton, the question, and then, of course, the answer.
It's on here.
Yes, we can hear you.
Was Jeffrey Epstein on? You apparently took 26 flights on planes connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Was he on every flight you were on?
Was he on every flight I was on? That's a good question.
If you know.
What?
If you know, their flight manifest, do you know?
There'll be a record of it, but I think he was, or certainly on most.
You think he was? Well, that's okay. Was Ghislaine Maxwell on every flight you were on, as far as you remember?
The same answer. I think she was, but there'll be a record of it.
Okay. When you took these flights, you're saying a lot of them were on behalf of your foundation or your charitable work, correct?
Yes.
Who did you normally bring on these flights? I assume, employees of the foundation, whatever.
I brought people who worked with me, especially people who would have to follow up on the fundraising or people who were involved in my AIDS work. I bought people who...
Just like I never go anywhere alone. You never went anywhere alone, right?
What? No.
We always have an
And I had the Secret Service with me. And then on occasion, I had people who had volunteered to help us and wanted to see what we were doing. For example, I think it was on one of these trips, I think, that I had my first trip for the man who's now the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, and his wife. They helped me get started.
Now, another thing that really stood out to me during Bill Clinton's testimony is his physical reaction to many of these questions. There were certain times where it was rather contentious, and Bill Clinton was literally like covering his face, but his hands were shaking like a leaf. He would be drinking from a coffee cup, and it looked like he was going to spill it. Quite literally, almost like a Parkinsonian type tremor that he was having. But Cheryl Mills' behavior during this entire line of questioning was also very, very uncomfortable, and she was doing her best to try to manage former President Clinton. Now, here is the response. J.B. Pritzker basically accuses Bill Clinton of lying under oath. The quote from the governor's office: Governor Pritzker was asked to travel with President Clinton on 2 trips, once in 2008 and once in 2013. Neither utilized Jeffrey Epstein's aircraft, nor was he accompanied by that man or Ghislaine Maxwell. We understand that the GOP is desperate to deflect from the heinous accusations against President Trump and the Epstein files, but this is a particularly weak effort to assign blame where there is none. So this begs the question, did Bill Clinton lie under oath, or is Governor J.B. Pritzker lying now to try to distance himself from a scandal that his brother is already directly embroiled in? Now, of course, it would be no problem for J.B. Pritzker to lie. He's got no reason to tell the truth here. He needs to stay as far away from it as possible. But it's not the GOP who brought his name up. Nobody talked about J.B. Pritzker other than Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is the one who volunteered this information. Now, here's another interesting interaction where Bill Clinton also kind of gives up the ghost about what you can expect from his testimony. He said, normally, it's not a good idea to bring in a witness that you know is lying. And this is from Anna Paulina Luna's account.
Individual by the name of Sarah Ransom.
I don't believe so.
Okay. There have obviously been claims made about you, and I do not believe that these claims are credible.
Sarah Ransom is an unreliable witness. She's been caught lying on multiple occasions. She also was an adult when she came into the Epstein orbit, and she has attempted to use this situation as a profit vehicle. Now, that's not to say that Sarah Ransom may not believe that her life is in danger. However, based upon the changing narrative that she has spun on various occasions, in my opinion, everything she says must be taken with a grain of salt and cannot be considered factual or reliable. One of those things that she said was that she had video of Bill Clinton molesting a young girl, and she offered to sell it to a journalist. That journalist, I believe I told this story already, but just for the interest of the story, I'll tell it again. That journalist traveled a great distance to meet Sarah Ransom in person and to acquire that footage so that it could be published. Sarah Ransom essentially didn't show up for the meeting and then demanded more money, and then eventually was forced to admit that the footage doesn't exist. Now, that doesn't mean that footage of Bill Clinton doing terrible things doesn't exist at all. But unfortunately, Sarah Ransom has placed some level of unnecessary scrutiny on the entire story. And who's to say that that wasn't on purpose to perhaps muddy the waters and exonerate Bill Clinton in the eyes of some?
The reason I am asking you specifically about that name is because that individual stated that you were in sex tapes, okay? It was unfounded and it was discredited. But given the politicization of this entire investigation, do you believe that it would be appropriate of members of this committee to bring in witnesses, whether it is about you or another president, that have unfounded allegations regarding sexual claims of misconduct?
That's not a decision for me to make.
As a recommendation in regards to avoiding trafficking, et cetera, and bringing justice for the victims, would you make that recommendation to this committee?
Congressman, just so I understand the question, you're saying if the witness has unfounded claims?
Well, I don't believe that Sarah Ransom's claims about the president are founded. I don't believe that there's sex tapes with you, President Clinton.
No, I'm just asking about your question. Is it you're not asking if somebody with plausible claims should be brought in. You're asking if somebody with implausible, unfounded claims.
Correct, because these claims were found to be unfounded by investigators.
So are you asking his opinion?
Yes, because we are trying to figure out in regards to being able to further this investigation and whether or not we are going to be interviewing other individuals regarding sex trafficking, avoiding in the future. I know that you and your wife have both been big on this issue. So I'm asking you, would you think that it would be appropriate that this committee bring in someone like Sarah Ransom, who has unfounded claims that have been debunked in this investigation? It's
he
a
answered
simple
the question about, he answered this question when you first asked it then, when he said that it wasn't for him to make those decisions.
Well, I'm asking for his recommendation to the committee and follow-up. It's not a gotcha question. This is obviously a very serious investigation.
Well, first of all, I recommend that you have on your staff a prosecutor who's had a lot of experience in this, dealing with these cases. Normally, it's not a good idea to bring in a witness that you know is lying.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Now, the reason Anna Paulina Luna wanted that on record is because Sarah Ransom and a number of the other so-called victims who have stories that have changed over the years have highlighted a number of them on the show in, recent months, is because you've got Democrats who are clamoring for these people. Ro Khanna brought that one woman who had initially claimed to have been a minor, claimed to have been a victim, claimed to have never been assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein, and then it turned out she was actually 20 years old. She brought in no fewer than 20 minor victims. And then suddenly, after Jeffrey Epstein was dead and she could make a claim to the Victims Fund, she then became a victim of rape by Jeffrey Epstein. But even allegedly after having been raped, she continued to go to Jeffrey Epstein, get paid for happy endings and massages, and of course, bring him fresh young girls to be trafficked. So, all right, G. Fontes says, maybe we should have federal extension cord registrations with how dangerous they are. I can only imagine how many minorities they kill that simply go underreported. That is funny. All right. Now, we also have an announcement from Dr. Oz. He has officially launched an investigation into the New York Medicaid program because the numbers simply don't add up. There is apparently $124 billion which has been spent, which Dr. Oz claims is largely due to waste, fraud, and abuse. He sent a letter to Governor Hochul earlier today, and he has asked for an explanation and an investigation. So let's go ahead and watch this announcement video from Dr. Oz and CMS.
Heart surgeons are trained to look at the numbers. When something doesn't add up, you don't ignore it, you investigate. And right now, the numbers coming out of New York's Medicaid program don't add up. New York spends more than $100 billion a year on Medicaid. That's the second highest in the nation. New York's average spending on each beneficiary is over $12,500. That's 36% higher than the national average. As a result, New York's average Medicaid spending per resident was the highest in the country, nearly 80% higher than the national average. Now that alone demands scrutiny, but it gets worse. Personal care services. These help Medicaid patients do something that our families would normally do for us, like carrying groceries. New York State made this screening even more lenient by allowing problems like being easily distracted to qualify for a personal care assistant. And that's led to $45 billion in spending in just over 2 years. New York already has high Medicaid enrollment. And in last year, 5 million beneficiaries, that's nearly 3 out of 4 Medicaid enrollees, received these personal care services. That level of utilization is unheard of and has made personal care services the #1 occupation in New York State.
Wow.
Now, New York has turned this program to help our most vulnerable into a massive jobs program reimbursed by federal taxpayers. Let me touch on 2 other programs. Home health aid payments jumped 65% year over year, twice in a row, even though the number of patients did not increase at that crazy high rate. And adult daycare spending spiked over 100% in the last 3 months, while federal prosecutors uncovered a $68 million fraud scheme involving kickbacks at these adult care centers. Now, this isn't about politics. It's about protecting patients and protecting taxpayers. We owe New Yorkers transparency. We owe beneficiaries integrity. And we owe the American people accountability. When the numbers don't make sense, we ask hard questions, and we expect an honest answer. Governor Hochul has a month to share a reasonable corrective action plan to fix the fraud, waste, and abuse in New York State, or CMS will start deferring payments to protect Medicaid.
So exactly the same types of fraud that we've seen in Minnesota, in Ohio, where else do we have? Oh, in Maine, in Massachusetts. The data is undeniable. We have a series of fake businesses which have been set up, California, can't forget about California, that have been set up as a skim to take money out of the pockets of federal taxpayers and to subsidize criminal networks. The average Medicaid spending per resident in the state of New York is the highest in the country. It is nearly 80% higher than the national average. These elevated costs reflect a combination of more New Yorkers enrolled in Medicaid relative to the state's population, clearly potential fraud, expansive benefit structures, and excessive provider payment levels within New York's program compared with most other states. Now, obviously, there are people in New York who should qualify for Medicaid, who are deserving of these benefits, but exactly like those other states I just mentioned, the state of New York has got no system of checks and balances. You've got more than 6.8 million New Yorkers, 34% of the population, who are currently being covered by Medicaid. The drivers for this explosive growth are the programs that Oz just laid out. And with so much potential fraud in the state of New York, it would be retarded to not look into this and investigate it. You've got $400 million a year being spent on social adult daycare centers. These cases are ongoing, have program integrity vulnerabilities within New York State's Medicaid program, community-based service delivery system. All of it warrants a structural breakdown from the very bottom to the top. And with a 121% increase in spending on these non-medical transportation services in the last 3 months, it looks to me like people know that the money train is about to be shut off, and they are trying to get as much cash out of the system as they possibly can. Kathy Hochul is not happy about this. Of course, she doesn't want this to be exposed. If this money is cut off, undoubtedly it might lead to arrests, it might lead to trials, and it also may lead to people not voting for Democrats in future elections. Also, you've got all of these medical systems, which are more than happy to soak up all of this money. They don't care if fraud is going on because they're getting a major cut of it. So you've got a lot of people who are benefiting from this all across the state, just as they are in these other states. And at the same time, the people who truly need these services are the ones who are going to be left in the dust. Now, one final story I want to bring you. A person that was highlighted in Nick Shirley's initial video exposing the Somali fraud in daycares and so many other of these healthcare type businesses. This is at an autism center. A 22-year-old who was featured in Nick's video and who turned a small idea into a multi-million-dollar business has just pled guilty in the state's crackdown on fraud. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Tell me if you remember this guy.
Daycare centers, we're trying to find a spot for our little boy Joey. but we thought maybe we could check him into the autism center. Because none of the daycare centers are open. Yeah, and how many kids do you guys have at this autism center?
I can't give you a number now.
Like more than 5?
Probably, yeah.
Probably, so you don't really know?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about like the fraud that's been labeled on the autism centers here? What do you guys do think about the fraud, or how come the autism centers are popping up?
I can't answer
What news? Are you a news reporter?
My name's Nick. We're doing a little documentary trying to find little Joey a spot to put himself in one of these centers here, because there's...
So why are you asking us about
The fraud? Yeah, because we want to make sure we're going to legit business if we're going to bring our little boy Joey here.
This is not a Joey spot. Yeah. But that's our number. Yeah, but this is we can't let you guys in. So.
Okay, thank you. So once again, little Joey, he can't even go to daycare, and now they won't even accept him if he has autism.
And again, no kids. Couldn't tell you how many.
No kids. Can't tell you how many kids. So the fraudster's name is Yusuf. Yusuf started this center at the tender age of 22. He hired unqualified staff. He billed impossible hours. He paid kickbacks to families to have those kids sign up. He sent over $200,000 to Kenya. He bought a $100,000 semi-truck, and he admitted in court that he didn't even know anybody with autism. There were investors who supplied fake clients, and then he would handle the paperwork, and he would essentially commit the fraud. This is just one of the many different scams that have been discovered in Minnesota. Here is local reporter Lou Ragoose with a little bit more detailed information about Abdinajab Yusuf.
$6 million in taxpayer money stolen by a supposed autism clinic, and the company's owner just pleaded guilty. Abdinajab Yusuf, only 28 years old, was the CEO of Star Autism Center in St. Cloud. He's the second man charged with defrauding Minnesota's autism programs. I was at his court hearing.
How much of the $6 million did you keep for yourself? How much are you going to be able to pay back?
Yusuf and what he describes as investors ran the scheme for 4 years while they claimed to help kids with autism. In reality, Star Autism hired family members as young as 18, totally unqualified to work there. They recruited Somali families to enroll their kids. And if the kids didn't have an autism diagnosis, Star Autism fraudulently got those diagnoses. Those families then received a kickback, also paid for with taxpayer money. Some of the reimbursements they turned in were blatantly fraudulent. Yusuf claimed one employee provided 430 hours of autism services in a single month, and another provided autism services 270 consecutive days without a day off. He also claimed one worker gave 23 hours of services in a single day and 22 and a half hours of services on another day. Yusuf spent $100,000 of taxpayer money on a Freightliner semi-truck and sent another $200,000 to Kenya. Although the estimated amount of fraud within the EIDBI or autism programs in Minnesota is astounding, only 2 people have been charged so far, Yusuf and Asha Hassan. Now both of them have pleaded guilty. When asked by the judge if those investors will be indicted, the prosecutors said yes.
Are you going to testify against the other defendants?
Yusuf is likely looking at about 5 years in prison when he's sentenced. I'm Lou Ragoose.
5 years in prison, and he needs to be denaturalized and sent back to whatever country his ancestors came from. Final thank yous from our friends over here on Pilled. Let me see. I need to say thank you to Filter Dog. Oh, I answered that one. Sean Joe answered that one. Filter Dog, congratulations on the appointment of Mojibata Khamenei, 56, as the new Ayatollah and supreme leader of Iran. Let's see if you last longer than the last guy. I believe he was the son of Khamenei, the last Khamenei. Hogleg71, thanks for the cookie. Average Joe Patriot, good to see you, homie. Thank you for the shades. Future so bright, you gotta wear shades. And Red Gun 51, thank you very much for the can. I do appreciate you guys. Final word from our friends over here on Rumble. My friends, if you still have not yet tried 1775 coffee, I got to ask you an honest question. What the heck are you doing? It is great coffee. You got to give it a shot. They have some of those starter kits still available. In those starter kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast that hits nice and hard, their smooth medium roast, it goes down a treat, and their Vitality Mushroom coffee that gives you clean energy and laser focus without the crash. Plus, it's all made from the highest quality beans you can find. single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. You're also going to get a couple of free goodies, that gold spoon clip, a very strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for just $99. This is for the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually good. It truly is. You should try it. So head on over to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of those starter kits before they are gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. If you're on Rumble, you can use the link that you see right there, or you can use that QR code that you see on screen. Either way, 1775coffee.com/studio. Thank you very much to the good folks over there at Rumble, and thank you to all of you for hanging out with us today. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. I'm looking forward to seeing even more people plead guilty, get sentenced to prison. And when you think about every single one of those co-conspirators and the autism scams, the daycare scams, they need to indict every single parent that fraudulently enrolled their child in either one or more of those programs. I want all of them to go to prison. I want them off the streets. I want all of that money to be clawed back. They are also, this is something that I didn't get a chance to report on the other day, but the federal government is actively now going through the process of repossessing and taking all of the property that was purchased by these people that bought homes and supercars and luxury purses and goods with the taxpayer money that they defrauded. So there's going to be a lot of property that the government is going to be taking in, and that should also include property that was bought with taxpayer money that exists in other countries. I don't care if it's Kenya or Somalia or wherever it may be. Get it, take it, give it to the American taxpayer. Let's get our money back, and let's begin providing for our own people. All right, you guys, check out the links for the rest of the sponsors in the description below this video. My friends over at Tamarack Garden, tamarackgarden.com. Use the code RP78, and for some reason it's not working. Let me see. There we go. These are all natural American-made products that are from organic and whole sources. These are produced by an American patriot family. You can go and check it out. They've got everything you could possibly need: skincare, healthcare, natural and organic, things for mothers and babies, herbal supplements, herbal teas and syrups, dermatologist recommended skincare, stuff for outdoor like natural mosquito repellents, herbal remedies and salves, natural lip balm. All of it, again, made in an American patriot family's home. These people are great. Love them. And they'll also be there at GART in Nashville if you guys are going to stop over for that. So use code RP78. You'll get $10 off a $50 order. Also, my good friends over at onenessdrops.com/redpill78, where you can get your chlorine dioxide water purification kits. You'll get 15% off everything on the website, even if you get one of the bundles that gives an additional discount. This is where I get my DMSO and my chlorine dioxide, but they've also got mullein extract for lung health and soursop tincture for cellular regeneration. Don't forget about Mike Lindell at MyPillow.com. Use code RP78 to get up to 80% off of his amazing American-made products. The MyPillow 2.0, the slippers, the bathrobes, the Giza Dream Sheets. Declare jihad on a good night's sleep, or you can get yourself a mattress or a mattress topper. All of them will help to put Mike Lindell into the governor's mansion in Minnesota. That would be absolutely incredible. And my friends over at rncstore.com/RP78 for your Laetrile B17 products. If you have any questions about what B17 is good for, you can reach out, or you can go to check out my interviews that I've done with John Richardson Jr., who is the founder of the RNC store. And you can check out and see why people would want to take B17 or Laetrile. All right, my friends, good luck. God bless. Have a great night. And I'll see you here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace. I'm going to send you guys over to Brad and Abby, so please say hello from me. Tell them I love them.